Lance has received a metric crap ton of changes in Wilds, and there's a lot of uncertainty for a lot of its users, new and old alike. I want to delve into the nuances of the weapon and the actual game plan from a moment-to-moment basis. I'm going to assume you know what each move of the Lance is this generation, but I am going to go into some necessary details for certain moves starting off to give you a baseline. As well as this, some definitions for common terms will pop up for those who might be new and unaware. Please feel free to pause to read them throughout the video. Your high poke does more damage than your lows, but they come out slower, except on the third poke. For this reason, you almost always want to end your third hit on a high poke if you can hit a good hit zone. If not, you're often better using focus mode low pokes to reposition your hunter to a better hit zone. Your triple poke finisher can be quickly interrupted by the second poke with a guard. By extension, this means you can very quickly input a counter stance and then go into power guard depending on what the situation calls for. Every type of guard, excluding guard dash, can trigger a power clash. As far as I know, insta-blocking does not increase the build rate of power clashes. Not every monster is power clashable. Here's a list of every monster that is. Each poke in your combo levels up your charge counter. If you activate it at the start, it takes a while to charge up. At the second poke, it starts yellow, and after your third poke, it's instantly at red charge. Charge counter triggers offensive guard when successful. Instablock triggers it as well, while an unsuccessful charge counter still can. It's just much tighter than any other option. Now, let's start with our optimals and move from there. Lance has a lot of options, but where you use each depends on your opening. Starting with knockdowns, leaping thrust, wide sweep, high thrust, triple poke is your go-to. Using focus mode, you can angle your leaping thrust to get a better hit zone, and don't be afraid to replace your wide sweep with a second poke if you need to avoid a shit zone. Just don't forget to put the wide sweep at the end if you have time, as it's by far the most damaging part of the combo. While charging does technically do more damage, you tank your sharpness value so much that you end up losing a lot of damage in the long run. You really only want to be using this with protective polish. The important bit of this loop is understanding when the monster wakes up, what it will do, and when that happens. You want to end your combo in anticipation of the monster's actions. Will they roar? Make sure you end your combo with enough time to do a level 3 charge counter since it's your best DPS option. Will they taunt or start their tired animation? Continue your combo like normal and continue anticipating. The most important part here is to recognize your limits. You're going to misjudge a situation and be caught in a wide sweep or not ending your combo properly. Make sure you have a fallback. If you realize you don't have enough time to get a charge counter off, just go for an insta-block and get the shield bash damage, offensive guard trigger, and quicker loop. If you enter counter stance by accident, you can also always cancel into power guard for a much more powerful finisher. The most complicated option after a knockdown is if they try to hit you with an attack. You now have to pick a counter option depending on what their animations tell you. In general, you always want to start this process at the end of a combo so you can go into charge counter 3, or bail and power guard depending on the situation. This all essentially boils down to a game of poker, where you know the monster's tells and you have to make an educated guess on whether to fold or raise. You choose an option based off of these 3 main concepts. 1. Is the attack part of a longer combo? 2. Is the attack a multi-hit? If so, what kind? 3. How much time is left after the attack? First of all, combos are important to recognize. Some are faster, like New Udra's Tentacle Slams, and some have more time in between them, like Rathian's Double Tailspin. It's pretty easy here to make a judgment. If there's little to no downtime on a combo, insta-block and sneaking in return thrust is almost always your go-to bet. For slower, longer combos, you can afford to do multiple lower-level charge counters. These will beat the damage of insta-block return thrust spam, while also maintaining offensive guard and negating any chip damage. Next, multi-hit attacks. Discerning whether an attack is a multi-hit is important because there are a lot of attacks that feel like they really should be multi-hits, but aren't, and vice versa. There are 2 types of multi-hit attacks that matter for Lance. Multi-hits that hit close together, and ones that are spaced apart. Close together multi-hits, like Arkfeld's Sweep, can actually be blocked as if they were a single hit from the invulnerability frames given from a charge counter. Be careful with this though, as if you end up releasing too early or too late, you can end up taking extra damage when you really shouldn't have. If it's a multi-hit attack that hits further apart, like New Udra's Sweep, using a charge counter here will just get you hit. Instead, you can either insta-block them individually to trigger offensive guard, or power guard all the hits and fire back with either a leaping thrust or GRT depending on the final third concept. How much time is left after the attack? This one determines your follow-up options. If you know the monster recovers quickly from an attack, but it isn't part of a combo, make sure the option you choose has enough time to at least leave a perfect guard. Normally you'll have enough time to squeeze in a charge counter, but power guard leaves you with more choices. You have 3 main options. Leaping Thrust, GRT, and Revenge Thrust. Leaping Thrust is your fastest option here, though it loses to GRT and damage quite heavily. Choose this option if you're not sure how long your opening is, or if you know it will be short. GRT is your ideal option. It does a hefty bit of damage, especially when you're in the red. Its damage is comparable to that of a charge counter, and it leads into your finishing twin thrust or triple poke if you choose to do so. However, you have to be wary that you have the time and you don't overcommit to the finishing twin thrust. If you're unsure, exclude the thrust and go for a poke finisher, which can be interrupted with a guard if you need. Revenge Thrust should almost never be chosen unless you find yourself blocking an attack on a flying monster and need to get some damage in. The other two moves have horrible range, but this one has really piss poor damage. But I'd rather get some in than miss entirely. Still, sometimes the others can reach and it works out a lot better, so just be disciplined and wary. From this point onward, you're working towards your next stagger and are back in the blender. You have a little downtime to work at some attacks while the monster flourishes, but you want to be trying to find yourself in a rhythm where you're getting in as much damage as you can while always being available to route into a level 3 charge counter or a red GRT. As mentioned before, make sure you always have a backup, and you can always hold charge counter as long as you'd like. You might be doing less damage overall, but you won't be doing any damage if you're face first in the ground. Next up on the chopping block is mobility. In previous titles, Leaping Thrust and Guard Dash was your best bet. However, here it's a lot slower and a lot clunkier. There are two philosophies at play when it comes to Wild's mobility: repositioning and standing your ground. Repositioning is the more straightforward option. For longer distances, you want to be using dash attack. It's fast, reliable, and can be cancelled anytime after the startup. I find myself using this much more frequently in multiplayer than in solo hunts. For shorter distances, Guard Dash into Leaping Thrust is still your best bet, but there's a little more nuance to it this time. After the Leaping Thrust, going into the second Guard Dash is much slower. To offset this, if you input a hop after the Leaping Thrust and then Guard Dash, it speeds it up just a tiny bit. You can also repeatedly link guard dashes into back hops if you so choose. The other option is standing your ground. There's a lot to talk about here, so much that it could be its own video, but I'll give you the cliff notes. In solo play, or when using skills like Diversion, the monster will come to you, and it's up to you to position yourself in ways that leave you closer to the monster after their attack. The most common way to do this is by using a charge counter. This removes all of the knockback and chip from the attack and allows you to keep up the pressure when you really couldn't have before. Think of certain attacks with long sweeping movement animations, like Raydao's Wing Slide. An attack like this can be really hard to punish, and I've seen people just block once or even sheath and run towards his final location. This way loses a lot of time and damage. Instead, if you back hopped and then charge countered, you would damage the wing and leave yourself in a scenario where you had time to fully punish his animation without having to do a run back. While this example is small, I hope it illustrates the point of using your entire kit to preemptively keep close to the monster rather than reactively. When in multiplayer, try positioning yourself between the monster and your teammates. It's never easy, but in the grand scheme of things, it will help your uptime. There is another way to make sure the monster stays aggroed on you, and that is totally not a forced segue into talking about item usage. This is a lure pod. He's your new best friend, get used to him. Using one of these on a monster has two main uses: keeping aggro on yourself when needed, as well as keeping the monster in an area for longer. Figuring out when to take aggro has a little bit of nuance to it. Taking aggro at the wrong time can lead to a friend missing a large attack or a focus strike, while taking it too late can lead to an unfortunate cart. The best advice I can give here is to save lure pods in general to when you have key skills up. Things like the damage from the Jindahad set bonus are too valuable to give up, and you need to make sure the monster is aggroed on you. I'd also recommend using them to save teammates who are at critical HP. Lure pods are ideal for this because you can use them while unsheathed while in focus mode. This is key because you almost never want to sheath your weapon as Lance. In past games, this was crucial, and the same concept is relevant here. Sheathing as Lance takes an incredibly long time, and unless you're running Quick Sheath 3, you'll almost never be able to get a life powder off to save a teammate. Taking aggro for yourself is often the best way to save them that won't take up any of your valuable slots. The same sheathing concept also applies to yourself. If you need to use an item, Lance benefits greatly from Sacred Recovery, as it lets you skip the insanely long sheath animation, which more often than not gets you killed. If you get hit, you either wake up guarding or on a Sacred. Lastly, if you use a lure pod while the monster is leaving the area, it'll stay for just a little bit longer. This can be done multiple times, but each time the monster will stay a shorter amount. Save these for when the monster's at its very last ends and you want to kill it or trap it. That's about it for today. Thank you so much for stopping in. I'm going to be making videos much more frequently now, and if you have any suggestions, not just about Lance, but Monster Hunter or any topic in general, feel free to leave them below. Have a nice night.